the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday afternoon already. A little unusual time for our news update, but what the hell, we do it when we can. Hope everybody's having a fantastic week so far. And yeah, I had a doctor's appointment in the morning, so kind of screwed up, messed up my entire day, but here I am. And committed to doing a show, a news highlight show every weekday of the week when I am in Puerto Rico, when I'm home. All right, I'm sure there'll be occasions where that is impossible, but let's hope they're minimal. Having some computer problems. Part of my computer is like frozen. I have no idea why. I have no idea what's going on. It's behaving really weirdly. So if everything just goes dead at some point, that's the explanation. This happened like 2 minutes before I started, so I couldn't like reboot the whole system and get it going. But I'll have to do that after the show. Hopefully, it'll allow us to complete the show before it goes completely bonkers. Let's see. Anything else we need to do? Yes, as I predicted. Just wanted to mention this. As I predicted. I got a bunch of unsubscribes yesterday. You can't, it turns out, criticize Tucker Carlson or Fox News without getting real retribution. There you go. It's the price of integrity. So I thought I'd start out right off the bat with criticizing Tucker Carlson, and just in case I miss anybody, and Donald Trump. So we'll do them both and just get rid of them. Right? You just get rid of them. Yeah, but Shazbot says they can only unsubscribe once. That is true, but I seem to get constantly new subscribers who sometimes somehow think that I'm going to toe the party line when it comes to Republican nonsense. All right. So, this Dominion lawsuit against Fox with regard to defamation is just a gift that keeps on giving. I mean, if you've read anything from the Dominion lawsuit, it is just unbelievable in terms of revealing Fox for what these people really are and how they manage. It truly is stunning. It truly is stunning. Anyway, Tuesday, we got a whole bunch of new documents released as part of the lawsuit, including more documents about Tucker and more documents from, and more texts from Tucker and more stuff from Richard Murdoch and the CEO, Suzanne Scott. Now, I can't go over all of this, but because there's so much there, and but a lot of it is juicy. If you're interested, you can just look up the Dominion lawsuits and go look at the documents, and there's a lot of fun stuff. But just a few things. As the election was winding down, as the election was over, about 2 months after the election, it was clear at Fox to pretty much everybody that Donald Trump had lost. There was a certain relief among the Fox that he is gone. So this is Tucker Carlson in a tweet on January 4th, 2021, 2 days before the January 6th. He wrote, "We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. I truly can't wait." And then in a follow-up tweet in the same conversation, "I hate him passionately." Now, just reset a second. We're talking about Tucker Carlson here. This is what Tucker Carlson said about Donald Trump. "I truly can't wait, basically, to ignore Trump most nights. And then, I hate him passionately." And then, with regard to Trump's 4-year record, with regard to his presidency, this is what Tucker Carlson had to say, quote, "We're all pretending we've got a lot to show for it, because admitting what a disaster it's been is too tough to digest. But come on, there really isn't an upside to Trump. It's Robert Murdoch, in testimony said he said they knew Trump had lost, and he knew Trump had lost, and everybody really knew Trump had lost. Laura Ingraham was angry at the channel for continuing to play up Sidney Powell and the whole pro-Trump angle. I mean, this is Laura Ingraham. It really is, unbelievable how negative all these people were, how negative they were with regard to Trump, and how negative they were with regard to Trump's presidency and his legacy. And yet they don't say this on air. They'd never say this on air. And now when obviously Trump is back, Trump has survived. I think what they thought was Trump was finished after that election. I think most of us hoped that would happen. But now that he's back to sucking up to him, back to pretending he is God's gift to all of us, back to pretending he's the best and the greatest. I mean, it was just, I just read a story. Where is it? There it is. I mean, they're back to editing him to make him look good. So, for example, I think it was last night, Donald Trump did an interview with Hannity, in which he said, there would be no war, and I would have negotiated. I would negotiate a deal with Putin. There would be no war. This is all because of Biden, and da-da-da-da-dum. And part of that, he said, quote, "That's without even negotiating a deal. I could have negotiated. At worst, I could have made a deal to take over something, for the Russia to take over something. There are certain areas that are Russian-speaking areas, frankly, but you could have worked a deal." In other words, Trump is saying here, I would have worked a deal with Putin, would have given him some of Ukraine in exchange for peace. All right, I mean, there are a lot of people who believe that, but we don't want to make Trump look bad. In other words, we don't want to make Trump look weak as negotiating a deal and giving something to Putin. So later that night, this is last night, I think, Hannity played excerpt from his exclusive interview with Trump on his primetime Fox News program. The original is on the radio show, so the whole thing was played on the radio show because it was live. And he did highlights of his interview, and in the highlight of the interview, he basically edited out the part where Trump says parts of it speak Russian, and I'd give Putin that. It basically goes, I could have negotiated, and then it skips 30 seconds, and it goes to something about China. Still covering his ass, still, playing games to try to make him look as appealing as possible for the Republican base, for the Fox viewers, still wanting to make sure they don't make looking bad and hurt their own ratings. I mean, this is some of your news network. All right, let's jump into some of the topics we have. What is going on here? So let's see. It looks like I double booked and I have another meeting right now. That's not good. That's not good. One second. Let me just deal with this. Let's see. All right, that whole section is locked by my computer. All right, so let's jump in. Biden, where's Biden? So Biden proposed a budget today that he claims will reduce the deficit by $2 trillion over 10 years. That's peanuts, that's nothing. But, still, $2 trillion over the next decade, reduce the budget instead of increasing the budget deficit. This would, reduce the deficit by $2 trillion instead of increasing it, which is almost every other budget we have. As part of this, of course, how is a Democrat going to cut the budget? The only way he can cut it is by raising taxes. So what we have is Biden proposing significant tax increases, primarily on wealthy individuals and corporations. We have the big issue is Medicare, which is, according to the Medicare trustees, is going to go bankrupt by, within the next 5-6 years. So in order to deal with that, Biden is doing two things. One, he is proposing to increase Medicare taxes. Right now, Medicare taxes are 3.8%. 3.8% of all your income. Social Security is capped at 120, something like that. You don't pay Social Security taxes at over a certain amount of income. Medicare, you pay it for everything, 3.8% right now. Biden would increase it to 5% for those people earning more than $400,000. So if you earn more than $400,000, you would pay 5% instead of the 3.8%. Oh God. One second, sorry. All right, let's see. So raising taxes on Medicare in order to extend its life. So raising taxes on Medicare, of course, who do you raise taxes for? From, you're playing to your base, you're playing to really, if you're going to increase taxes, the whole American tax system is built around don't tax the middle class as little as possible and provide as many benefits as possible to the middle class. Why? Because they are the voters. So every time there's tax reform, they eliminate, more people don't pay taxes. As it is, a significant percentage of Americans don't pay any taxes. And they keep increasing that. Of course, the burden of people who do pay taxes increases because the number of people keeps on shrinking. And of course, they have to pay more and more and more to compensate for the fact that so many other people are not shrinking. All right, God. I have to resolve this important meeting that it was scheduled for now, but is on my calendar for later. Oh, God, maybe I screwed up. Okay. 1 second. 4:30. All right, I think this will do it. All right, I think that's it. So the rich people, wealthy people, upper middle class, and the wealthy, how they categorize it, right, are paying a greater and greater and greater percentage of the total taxes in the U.S. constantly because the number of people is constantly shrinking. One of the differences between the U.S. and Europe is Europe has a wider tax base. In Europe, even though it has a more extensive welfare system, more people pay into the tax, into government. More people pay taxes. Fewer people are excluded from taxes. Yes, tax rates tend to be higher and more people pay them. In the United States, fewer people and tax rates are very, very, very progressive. It's interesting, but income taxes is much more progressive in the United States than they are in Europe. All right, so he wants to do that. He wants to also increase the top marginal income tax rate from 37 to 39.6, which is the rate going back. I can't remember when 39.6 was the rate. I think Bush reduced it to 37. Trump reduced it a little bit, maybe, and then he wants to raise the corporate tax from 21%, which is where Trump lowered it to, he wants to raise it up to 28%, which is not as high as it was before Trump, but still significantly higher than it is today. Of course, because the Republican won the House of Representatives, this is the importance of them winning, none of this is relevant because no way is any of this going to pass. Now, part of what is particularly bad here is not so much the taxes, but what Biden, the power Biden already has given Medicare, and now he wants to expand it. So Medicare right now, since the Inflation Reduction Act, has the power to negotiate with drug companies for drugs, for certain drugs, after a certain time has passed after they apply for a patent, after the drug is released. So the idea is that Medicare, because it buys a lot of drugs, will negotiate really, really, really low prices, and that is supposed to be good. Of course, what that does is squeezes drug company profits, squeezes the amount of investment in new drug development, and reduces innovation, reduces long-term drug development, reduces long-term healthcare prosperity. Biden now wants to propose to even embolden Medicare to do even more with more drugs from the beginning, right? From the beginning when the drug was released. In other words, they want to use the power of the state to basically eliminate drug company profits. They don't care about innovation. They don't care about new drugs. They don't care about life extension or curing diseases or anything like that. All our government cares about, all the left cares about, is reducing cost of healthcare. Reducing cost of healthcare. That's all they care about. And if in order to do that, you sacrifice drug development, in order to do that, you sacrifice finding cures for diseases, in order to do that, you sacrifice innovation and growth, and who cares? The only measure is we need to spend less on healthcare. This is why it was so important for Republicans to win the House, at least to win one of the chambers. If they couldn't win the Senate, at least win the House, because at least it makes it possible for the Republicans to basically veto this, and they will. Who knows what they will propose? My guess is they won't be a budget. They'll keep passing emergency resolutions to keep the government running and to keep funding for the government. They won't actually do a budget, proper budget, because Republicans don't want to put their proposals in paper because they want to cut spending and cutting spending while sounds good in the Republican base. It sounds good to the Republican base. When you actually get down to it and actually describe what the spending cuts are going to be, suddenly people don't like them, and people vote against them, and you lose all your support for them. So we're going to keep coming back to this story because this story is about the debt ceiling and the budget negotiations between the Republicans and Democrats. But this is going to be a continuous story. My guess is Republicans will not put anything in writing, will not propose an actual budget. They'll just keep procrastinating and pushing this out forward and attacking Biden's budget. It probably makes political sense for them to do that, but of course it doesn't make any, it's not particularly courageous or not particularly good for anything. Let's see. All right, we did that. What do we have? Yes. That story has disappeared on me, right? All right, today is not going well, as you can tell so far. Let me just I read a pretty amazing story today, and that is, we all know that right now the most likely scenario for the COVID leak was the idea that for the COVID was the idea that it leaked from a lab, a lab in Wuhan, China, that was doing research on, on COVID, on bats, viruses, and was really, really, problematic. It turns out, and of course, this lab supposedly was a level 4 lab, so the most secure lab, although it's suspected that the research they were doing on these corona vaccines, bad vaccines, was being done on the stage 3, which is less secure. Stage 4 is where you have the whole hazmat suit, you had the blue, and it's super secure, and everything's videotaped, and everything's monitored, and super, super, super secure, right? What is interesting, though, that whereas about 10 years ago there were only 24 such labs in the world, there are right now 65 new labs that can do this kind of research all the way up to level 4 being built in the world. 65 new ones. So just as we hear that it's likely that one of them leaked a virus that, numbers vary, but probably landed up killing, 6 to 7 million people around the world, we now hear that we have 65 new ones being built all over the world. Russia claims to be building a bunch of them. We're going to have new ones in India. China is building several. We have places like Indonesia, Brazil are building these kind of labs. There is no agreement, uniform agreement globally on how to secure these labs, how to monitor them, what to do if there is a leak, and how to inform everybody else. Countries are just building labs and hopefully, using their own using their own standards, or using standards to secure these labs. But I have to say, this idea that we're going to have, instead of 20-something labs, maybe 80, maybe ultimately 100 labs doing this kind of work, some of them are going to be doing gain-of-function research. It turns out that Boston University, a lab at Boston University, was combining the Omicron virus, COVID virus, with the original COVID virus, and the combination was actually more potent, more deadly than the original virus. They were doing this in a lab at Boston University. Nobody knew they were doing this. It was a privately funded project. I have no problem with gain-of-function research if it's done responsibly and properly and taken seriously. But one wonders, when you have a proliferation of labs, whether they all have the right kind of standards, the right kind of monitoring, the right kind of professionalism. One has to believe that as these proliferate, the risk of another lab leak also increases. China supposedly had very high standard in its lab, and yet it leaked anyway. It is, remember, most of these labs are going to be funded and run by governments. I would actually be, more assured if they were run by research institutions, run by universities or private corporations doing research. But here you have governments doing it. Who knows what kind of standards these governments are doing? And yes, should we have regulation of such labs? Yeah. This is the kind of thing that qualifies for regulation, don't you think? Just like I think if you have something that is dealing with some element that can literally cause harm to millions of people, there is real objective risk there. There should be some ability to monitor what's going on. There should be some insight, just like you don't want, corporations to be building and constructing nuclear weapons, or if they're dealing with something that could be turned into a nuclear weapon, you would want some kind of supervision to make sure it wasn't indeed turned into a nuclear weapon. You'd want some kind of controls, or you at least would want to make sure they had the right kind of controls, that it wouldn't be turned into the wrong thing. So there are rare cases where the risk of the activity, the risk of the activity is real and existential and viable, that you want some kind of guarantees. Now, it's possible that in a true free market, we would find different ways to regulate it, not government regulations, but industry regulations, insurance company regulating. But in a world where that doesn't exist because those markets haven't developed, because we expect government to do everything, wouldn't you then want the government to at least know something about that a lab stage 4 doing the kind of work that could kill millions of people is really living up to that standard, particularly governments around the world which don't necessarily have the highest standards for integrity, or don't have necessarily the highest standards for safety, or don't necessarily have the highest standards in terms of managing risk, given that the risks are not limited to a particular country and a particular place. Isn't this a good place to maybe have some international collaboration and actually have some kind of treaty around this, around different countries, given the risk is not localized? These are really complex issues, and I worry, not because I don't think these kind of issues can be dealt with, I think they certainly can. I worry because I think these kind of risks might not be able to be dealt with in countries that are super irrational, among people who don't respect human life, and where there is no real limitation. It's like allowing any country in the world to have nuclear weapons, allowing any country in the world to have this kind of level of biological research, this kind of level of biological ability to manipulate viruses and bacteria. This is biological warfare. It strikes me that there's some national security interest here, and at least it seems like we should have some kind of control over what's going on internationally. So something to be worried about, the proliferation of these labs globally. Finally, just a positive story about the New York Stock Exchange. You know, there was a period after the dot-com bubble burst, and a period in which there was real dot-com bubble burst, and there was a massive new amount of regulations. What was it? Sarbanes-Oxley that was passed in the early 2000s by the Bush administration that basically created these massive restrictions and made it difficult for companies to go public. And you know, basically what happened was the New York Stock Exchange became uncompetitive and very few companies listed. There was a massive decline in companies listing. And globally, New York lost was in decline as compared to Hong Kong, as compared to London, as compared to a lot of regional exchanges like Singapore, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, and even Hamburg in Germany. And you know, there was a real decline in New York's importance. Well, that has reversed itself. I'm not sure this is a credit to New York or the fact that all these other exchanges maybe have become as regulated as New York. And of course, we know what's happened in China. We've seen a real decline in China, a decline in the amount of financial and tech freedom you have in China. And as a consequence, I think, and as a consequence of the Chinese takeover of Hong Kong has lost a lot of its luster in terms of a stock exchange to go public in. And to some extent, that has happened in London. London, I think because of Brexit, has lost some of its leadership position. It was a major contender versus New York for new listings, but you know, that has basically faded. New York today, it basically dominates new listings, the raising of capital for new ventures in the world today. Even Chinese companies are back to listing on the New York Stock Exchange. They had a 2-year pause because of the Chinese government wouldn't let them. The Chinese government, but Chinese firms need capital. The Chinese government knows firms need capital. And they've lifted that ban, and Chinese companies are looking to the U.S. to list their stock. Just last month, Hesse Group, a Chinese electronics company, raised $190 million on the NASDAQ, and that's the largest Chinese listing since 2021, so in 2 years. Shane, a fashion firm, is also reportedly about to float its shares in New York. And even though American regulators are toughened the requirement for Chinese companies, they're basically forcing Chinese companies to disclose the kind of information that American companies disclose. They're not giving them any additional benefits. In spite of that, Chinese companies are going to be flocking to the U.S. As we said, Hong Kong has suffered because of I think China's takeover and the risk that entails. I think the Chinese stock markets are too manipulated. They lack objectivity. They're too speculative. So people don't want to list on the Shenzhen or Shanghai market. Tokyo has basically become a stock market that lists basically as a high market cap, but it's almost all Japanese, and they have very few listings from outside of Japan. Same Amsterdam and Dubai. They're grown, but they're basically regional, and they're questionable, and their accounting standards are questionable. Funnily enough, in spite of all the problems we have in the United States, in spite of all the economic issues, the United States still is a better place, still less regulated, more trusted than any other place in the world. New York stock markets are still healthy in spite of meme stocks, in spite of all the different issues that have come and gone. New York is still holding strong, and today, if new companies want to list and want to raise capital, it's still true that New York is the place to go. So don't give up on America yet, although one of the reasons America is doing so well is because everybody else is doing even poorer than we are. Shazbot, thank you for the $20. Let's run through some of these questions. And I apologize for the disruptions during the show today, but that's me being basically out of sync. And I hope that by tomorrow I'll be back into sync. All right. Miria says integrity is priceless, but here's a token of appreciation. Thank you, Miria. I really appreciate the token appreciation. Not that without it we would lose integrity, but it's always nice to be appreciated. All right, Liam says, never underestimate yourself. You are better than you think. Aristotle said that. Well, some people are better than they think. Some people are much worse than they think. I can think of quite a few people that are worse than they think, or at least worse than what they tell other people that they think. So Aristotle was I don't know who Aristotle was talking about. All right, we are let's see, we are 150 away from the goal, $150. We got a lot of super chat questions, or comments. Most of them are comments, seemingly, but they're all like $2, $5. So it would be great if people stepped in and got us to a $250 goal. It would be great. We'd probably have to have everybody do $2 right now, stickers of $2. It would be super if we got a few people asking questions at like the $150, $20 level, so we could get to the $155 we need to raise quickly. But stickers are great if you want to step in. $2 from every person gets us to where we need to be. If you want to do $5, it'll be safer because then fewer people need to participate. But there are 85 people listening. There are 85 people who get value from the show, and some of you I know are not contributing either to the Super Chat or on a monthly basis. It would be great to have you as part of the team, and it'd be great to have you as traders, value for value. So consider using the Super Chat to make a contribution to support the Yaron Brook Show. All right. If not, you can also become a monthly supporter on YaronBrookShow.com/support, Patreon or Subscribestar. Any one of those works. Locals works as well. And, join us. And again, it is value for value. Okay, Liam says, masculinity isn't toxic. The absence of it is. Weak men are abusive and spiteful. Strong masculine men are protective and loving. Yes, I think that's right. I think that's right. Of course, strength is, how does one measure strength? What does strength mean? And I think real masculinity does not involve necessarily strength of muscle, but strength of character. I think that's what real masculinity. Masculinity is about character, and it is not about how you look and how much muscle you have and stuff like that. But really, it's about the kind of person you have made yourself. It's kind of values you have adopted, the kind of person you are. And even this idea of protective, most of the way in which we protect ourselves today, most of the ways in which we protect our loved ones today have nothing to do with strength. They have nothing to do with muscle. They have nothing to do with, even with guns. They mostly have to do with being productive and being somebody of high character and being somebody who's predictable and being somebody who's reliable and trustworthy. Those are the things that allow us to protect our loved ones rather than muscle and muscle and physique. Of course, one needs less physique today when one can pull out an AR-15 and complement one's physique with a gun. All right, Liam also says failure is not an option, quitting is not an option, working hard over and over again is the only option. I don't know where these quotes are coming from, Liam. Are these you? So yes, well, failure is an option. We do fail. I think negating failure is a mistake. I think embracing failure makes a lot more sense. That is, viewing failure as part of the path to learning, as part of the path of self-improvement. That is the way to have a healthy approach to failure. I think ignoring it or negating it or evading it is not particularly helpful. It's not particularly helpful. All right. Liam, another quote from Liam, make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous. I like that. That's kind of fun. All right. Again, $136 to go. $2 from everybody who hasn't given yet would get us there. And again, be a first-time Super Chat contributor. Get over the hump. Support the show. Value for value. You get value from us. One of Freeman says, thanks for your talk in Zurich. Excellent. You're on fire at the Liberal Institute. Yeah, it was a really good talk, but they didn't record, or they say they didn't record the Q&A. And I was even on more fire in the Q&A. And I'm so upset that the Q&A doesn't exist. I will post the talk without the Q&A. But I don't understand how they didn't record the Q&A. The cameras were running. It was all there. It is possible that they're just not releasing the Q&A. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But it saddens me that you're not going to see the Q&A because I think I was in particular fire during the Q&A. And I will be releasing the talk, though, soon, within a week or so. Or maybe I'll hold back and release it while I'm in South America when I'm not doing live shows. Hopper Campbell says, bottom line is we're all used to having nice stuff. We are never going back to not just the dark ages, but a significant drop in our standard of living. The most people in the West today will tolerate is slow growth, i.e. Slowly making life better. It's only a matter of a few generations before we hit peak objectivism. I think Hopper Campbell is overly optimistic. I doubt that is a reality. I have no doubt that we could descend into real economic hardship. We did during the Great Depression, and we could do it again. I think there's a limit to how much we can delay and postpone the inevitable and keep pushing debt and keep pushing our just horrible economic situation out into the future. I also doubt that our educational system and the pathetic nature of education system can just be ignored or can just be, again, pushed out into the future with no consequences. So far, we've skirted disaster. I mean, we still live a disaster, which is we're living at low growth rate as compared to what's potential. But we've skirted a real collapse. I don't know. I'm not sure, and I don't know that we can forever maintain that. I wouldn't be surprised if we stagnated, not only if we saw slow economic growth, but if we saw some negative, low, not cliff-like, but negative economic growth as well. All right. Clark says, do these people have any idea they're sacrificing medical innovation and progress in the future, or just don't care? They think they're innovative enough, we don't need anything new, or just the price at all costs. I mean, they basically value equality. They value so-called equity. They value egalitarianism above medical progress. And they're quite happy to say that. The other aspect of it is they evade the source of medical progress. So another thing you will find from these people is that they constantly say, the progress will happen. You guys are just scaremongering. You're the guys who said the United States would go bankrupt over and over again if we had too much debt. You're the guys that said that the medical system would collapse if Obamacare was passed, and it passed and everything's fine. You're the people who said all these horrible things. You're just nonsense. Medical innovation will happen anyway. And by the way, they will tell you, most of medical innovation happens in government labs. Most of medical innovation is funded by government. We're not going to stop that. We're going to continue doing that. So the drug companies make less money. So shareholders of drug companies, and again, they evade, right? But they really believe this. I remember once reading a book by a couple of environmentalists, and basically the book said, you know, they all identified certain problems, and they said, yeah, technology will solve those. Yeah, the technology doesn't exist yet, but technology will come. Technology will happen. We just have to prioritize it. As if we say we need technology X happens. You know, freedom has nothing to do with it. A free mind, a particular process doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just a matter of will. If the government wills it, it will happen. If the government wills new drugs, they will happen. I mean, you really have to understand their mindset. Their mindset is that this will happen because they decree it, and that all innovation, all progress ultimately comes from government and comes from, you know, the collective in one way or another. Okay, Molten Splendor says, have you read the House resolution passed on 2/7/2023, HR 9, Resolution 9, denouncing the horrors of socialism? I haven't actually read it, no. But it seems to me, or it sounds like one of these, what do you call it, that Republicans do. It sounds like I mean, I'll have to read it, but it sounds like something that they do for PR, that they do, you know, to appease the base, to say we did it. But if they really, really were willing to denounce the horrors of socialism, then they would be willing to start talking about privatizing Social Security, privatizing Medicare, phasing it out, eliminating it, getting rid of much of the welfare state, and actually moving towards getting rid of socialism in America, the socialist elements in America. So mostly this is Republican theater. This is theater by the Republican Party. But I will look it up and see what it says and to what extent it's any good, even as theater. Is it any good as theater? Is the question. Thanks, Molten Splendor, for bringing it to my attention. James asked, will drugs be legalized before the welfare state is abolished or vice versa? Both are going to happen in a very long time. So I don't think we're looking at either one happening anytime soon. In terms of the order, I think some drugs will be legalized before the welfare state, but total drug legalization will only happen after the welfare state is abolished. Clark asked, will the Supreme Court overturn Obamacare? I doubt it, because I think they're too afraid of the fact that there is no alternative. And Republicans have proposed no alternative, and Republicans through the legislature didn't actually overturn it. They didn't do anything to move to overturn it. So I doubt it, but it is possible. This is quite a conservative court, and it is 6-3, so they might have the votes without Roberts to overturn it, and then what, right? What will they do then is the real question with the people who, at that point, will indeed lose coverage, and then there'll be a huge outcry, and they'll demand something, an alternative, and the Republicans haven't worked that through yet. You know, Trump had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. He had an opportunity to present an alternative to Obamacare, not just to repeal Obamacare, but to replace it with something that moved us towards greater freedom, medical saving accounts, a lot of things that you could have done, taking away the interest deductibility or the tax deductibility of corporate contributions to healthcare insurance. Lots of things you could have done to make it better. Yeah, and he didn't. So I doubt Republicans are going to propose anything now when they don't have the power to pass anything. Catherine Dawson, Arkansas passed Learn Act, includes vouchers. That's great. As I've always said, I prefer education saving accounts. I really hope that these vouchers don't give the state the right to decide which schools get them and which schools don't. That would be awful. We want real freedom, real innovation, real competition. And for that, we need education saving accounts. But good. There are a lot of states out there that are going to be passing this in the next few years. What is the future of the London Stock Exchange? A lot of companies are moving to U.S. or other stock markets. Are there any benefits of listing on the LSE other than jurisdiction? I mean, the big benefit is the rule of law, British law. It's good law. The regulatory environment is relatively good as compared even to the U.S. or to Europe. So that is a big advantage. I'd say that the other advantage was well, no, that is the main advantage. I think Brexit has made it less advantageous because again, listing on LSE doesn't give you the same reach as it used to. It doesn't give you the same access to capital as it used to. Capital doesn't flow as freely as it used to. So you're limited in the capital pool. British pension plans and insurance companies don't invest in equities quite as much as American or and in some cases Europeans. So LSE is going to struggle. And I think Brexit was bad for the LSE, particularly given the fact that the UK has now moved itself to be more of a free trade, free movement of capital, free movement of goods and people kind of place like we were promised when Brexit passed. So we'll see. James, how do you see healthcare changing in the U.S. due to the population aging rapidly? How can one benefit from the U.S. Always increasing the debt ceiling? I mean, the problem is not U.S. increasing the debt ceiling constantly. That's just a power play by whoever's in power. The problem is government spending. The spending is out of control. The healthcare is going to change because of the aging of the U.S. population. We already have a shortage of doctors. That is going to become more acute. We already have a shortage of nurses. That's going to become more acute. Probably have a shortage of hotel beds. We're ultimately going to have more rationing and more lines and rationing, and it will become more expensive. So it's just going to get worse because we're not letting the market adjust because the government controls so much of this. Colleen, thank you, Colleen. Do you think the U.S. will actually do something about the death of 2 Americans in Mexico? We need to free up healthcare so we don't have to go abroad. No, they won't do anything about it. And the reason people went to Mexico, they were going to Mexico, was to get actually plastic surgery, and that is significantly cheaper in Mexico. In that case, you can get the plastic surgery in the U.S. It's just cheaper in Mexico. But some treatments you can't get in the U.S., like certain stem cell treatments. You have to go to Mexico or Panama, or I understand Colombia now is doing it. Is the U.S. going to change anything about this? No. Is the U.S. going to make healthcare freer so that costs can come down and we can get more choices and more access to a variety of different types of procedures? No. I don't see any reason to believe that it's going to change like that. If anything, it seems to be getting worse, as we said, because of the Biden administration and because of the aging of the population and because Medicare is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger portion of all of healthcare. which means we have socialized medicine for a bigger and bigger and bigger portion of healthcare in the U.S. Paul asked, what was the percentage economic growth or contraction during the Great Depression? I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was clearly a contraction. So the Great Depression saw real contraction. And in terms of real contraction of standard of living, quality of life, not GDP, because GDP is a bad measure, real contraction of standard of living, quality of life, really the contraction only ended at the end of World War II, because GDP grew during World War II, but that's GDP where you're measuring consumption of tanks and weapon systems and things like that, not consumption and production of real, of things that actually benefit human life. James G. asked, did you watch The Last Dance on Netflix? I don't think so. I don't know what The Last Dance is. Is it a movie, a TV series, a documentary? I don't know what it is. So, but I don't think so. All right, everybody, we are $19 short of our goal, but thank you, everybody, for getting us this close. Maybe somebody, before we end the show completely, will jump in and get us over the hump. Let's see. There will be a show tomorrow. It will be in the morning sometime. I have to get my calendar all right. There will be a show tomorrow evening. It will be an interview with my business partner and friend, Robert Hendershot. We'll be talking about progress, innovation. It'll be a positive show. We'll be talking about ingenuism, which is an idea he has about the sources of innovation, particularly in the 21st century. Anyway, that'll be tomorrow, 7 p.m. East Coast time. I promise. Oh, The Last Dance is about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Yes, of course I watched that. Yes, I did watch The Last Dance. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it. It increased my appreciation of Michael Jordan. So thank you, James, for bringing that up. So we'll be highlighting the ingenuism. I do a regular podcast and YouTube show with Robert almost every week on ingenuism, about half an hour. But tomorrow we'll introduce it to all of you guys, and hopefully it'll be interesting, and you'll also be interested in watching the ingenuism regular podcast. They're different than this. They're much more positive, much more focused on progress and innovation and good stuff. Although some of the bad stuff is covered as well. Carolina, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. Carolina got us within $5 of our goal. Wow, just $5. Let's see. Wanda Freeman says, watch you on Zurich Talk. I will post on my channel my Zurich Talk really, really soon, I promise. Let's see. Yep. All right. Don't forget, you can become a regular monthly contributor to the Iran Book Show. Really support me, and show your appreciation for whatever values you get from the show. You make the show possible. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you to all the monthly contributors on Patreon, Subscribestar, Locals, and IranBookShow.com/support. I will see you all tomorrow morning.